Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Thursday afternoon in the second week of EAMS. We have two very interesting looking talks this afternoon. The first is by Eliana El-Khoury and Natasha May from Canada, who will be talking to us about alternative assessments in mathematics education. Over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Eliana El-Khoury. I am an assistant professor at Athabasca University in Canada. We are an online university. And I have with me Natasha, and she's the expert in math. I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natasha May. I am a contract faculty member, sort of part-time faculty member at York University in Toronto, Canada, and looking forward to talking about assessment practices.
Thank you. So the structure for today, we're going to share a little bit of a few examples that we found or we applied, and then Natasha is going to tell us how she applied it in her classroom, some of the concerns that she had, some of the lessons learned that she also encountered. So to start, I'm going to put a link in the chat because we want to know who is with us in the room and what you would like to know from this session today. So if you don't mind writing that in the chat, that would be great. The internet seems to be slow today. I'm sorry. For those of you who are not familiar with Jamboard, you can go to the left and you see that there's a T here for text box. You can click on it and then click and then you can write. Hi, Chris. Hi, Rebecca. So while we are waiting for more answers, I will tell you a little bit about the project that we have. I've been working on alternative assessment for almost 3 years now, and this is what I research is alternative assessment in multiple disciplines and how we can apply it, what can we learn from it, how to make it better, and the impact it has on the students and the instructors. So we have a project called Champions of Reimagined Assessment. And I'm going to show you a little bit from their work. And we have a full website on alternative assessment, and it has applications and examples. Hi, Tim. It's a fellow Open University too. My name is Moika. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct.
It is Moitza.
Moitza, yes. Okay, nice to meet you. Thank you. Hoping to get more insight on math assessment. Seeing details of the alternatives. Hi, Colin. And Masiek, I'm so sorry. I know I pronounced it wrong, sorry. From Durham University. Okay, so thank you for filling these questions, and let's go back to the presentation. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about what is alternative assessment. What do we mean by that? And why are we talking about alternative assessment? And why? What does it mean? And we're going to talk about examples and tell you a little bit about our project. So I want to know what type of assessment do you use in your classroom? So if you go to the second page in the Jamboard, would you be able to put some ideas of what types of assessment do you usually use? Do you use alternative ways or traditional ways of assessment, exams? If you can spend a minute or two there, just to know what other people are using. We spent the last few weeks researching in math, and that has been an interesting experience, interesting adventure, I would say. Right, Natasha? Not for you, for me.
It's good to see that things I try are happening elsewhere too.
Yes. Oh, hand in, upload photos of work, exams, online assessments. We have tutorials in traditional classroom settings. Open book. I love open book exams. Quizzes, assignments, tests, exams, participation. I actually just read a book yesterday, a paper yesterday, where they asked students to determine their grade for participation and to explain why they put that grade for themselves. And I thought that was interesting. Support digital exams, usually closed book. Classical exams, but we use Moodle quizzes as a learning tool. Okay, so thank you for filling this. I'm in central services, yes. Closed books, we've also delivered remote exams as open book this year. Yes, thank you. So we're going to talk about a few interesting ideas. We're going to start with a little bit of conservative ideas, and then we're going to end with more fun and exciting ideas. And just to say that we have a disclaimer here, is that we do understand that people have different approaches and different departmental needs and different faculty needs and different sizes of classrooms. We do understand that. We are here to present different ideas that exist out there and to discuss it with you and to see your how, if you would be interested in applying it. Natasha will talk about her experience. But we do understand that it doesn't apply all the time, and that's okay. We have a lot of ideas. We have 14 different alternative assessment ideas that we're going to share. So what exactly is alternative assessment? It's a different way of thinking about assessment, and it includes the design, the implementation, the feedback, and the grading. It also includes assessment as learning, for learning, and of learning. So we don't separate the process from the product. It's all together, whether it's formative or summative. If it's not a traditional exam, if it's not an exam or an essay, it's an alternative assessment. Also, we have this, I should put this slideshow. We have this framework, and it explains what alternative assessment is. And this is based on the different publications of people who are using alternative assessment and why. So alternative assessment uses alternative forms, like it could be online, it could be digital, it could be creative, videos, podcast, different forms. It is authentic, so it is related to real-world applications. It is equitable, and equitable here has different meanings and a lot of ramifications that we're going to talk about in assessment in mathematics. It's also flexible, and we've all had experience with flexible during COVID. It's renewable, so it's not something that we just do and only the student and the instructor see. It's out there. We can revisit it the next year or the next semester. It's interdisciplinary, so when possible, include multiple disciplines. It's co-created with the students or co-created with other instructors. It's continuous and it's culturally responsive, and it brings the experience of the students to the classroom. And most importantly, it's engaging and it's fun. And the people who have done alternative assessment, they usually tell me that it's engaging and it's more fun and they're proud of it. So why are we talking about alternative assessment? Because in the last few years, we've seen a lot of research about trust, that students, like we need to build trust with our students, especially in assessment. We need to create belonging through assessment, equity, compassion. We need the learning to be visible. We need to have more engaging assessment. And we all know how the impact of assessment on mental health. So we also want to talk about that. And we all know math anxiety. So we want to create alternative assessments that address all of these and that are also helping students learn. So also talking about grading and feedback, which we will not talk about today, but we just wanted to mention that they are part of alternative assessment. So alternative assessment, we wanted to reflect the world we live in. We don't want it to be separated from the world. We want to know what works and also what works best. And we are also rethinking the evidence that we are collecting as educators. So what is alternative? It could be related to the format, to the examples used, and to the decision maker. And these are three things that we're going to address in our techniques. Just a last point about equity. When we're talking about equity in mathematics, is we want to give all the students the opportunity to engage in challenging mathematics and to develop proficiency and to have their personal agency and to be successful in their math assessment. So as I said, we do have this disclaimer because we know that there are different types of math courses and we know that there are different requirements. We know that there are different sizes of classrooms, and we are not saying that every technique works for every classroom or for every instructor. We're just saying that we have all these techniques and you are the expert in your classroom and in your topic, and you can decide which one works for you and which one doesn't. So let's dive in. The first technique we're going to talk about is multi-stage exam. And multi-stage exam here, when we were doing the research, we found that there are different ideas to talk about multi-stage exam. Some people call them two-stage exam, there's three-stage exam, four-stage exam, and collaborative exams. Basically, the more known approach is a multi-stage where there's, at the beginning, there's an individual exam, and then there's a collaborative test. So the individual exam is 85%, and then students get together and they discuss and then resolve the same questions together as a group. And this is usually 15%. The three-stage exam, and I saw people do this in physics, and it was really interesting because they added a stage after the collaboration where students could go back to do an individual exam again. So they do the exam alone, and then they do the collaboration, they submit it again, and then they submit it a third time individually. And this measures how much students have learned from individual to collaboration to individual again. And then there's a fourth-stage exam is where they use the exam at the end. So related to the same questions, it's a final exam. And then they've done research on this to see the impact of doing individual collaboration, individual, and then a final test based on that. The research shows that the impact of this approach works better with open-ended answers. So when students are answering open-ended answers compared to multiple choice questions. And here I've been working with a group in University of Zanzibar, and they are using this approach because of the digital divide, because they know that some students don't have access or don't have the digital capacities to do the exams online. So doing this collaborative testing helps students learn from each other, so bridging that gap. And Natasha, to you.
So I haven't actually done this type of multi-stage exam, and this might connect with maybe some of your own experience, but certainly I think it's a great idea to have opportunities for students to connect and collaborate, learn from each other, to have that kind of support and learning, right? So just focusing on, so the learning development as opposed to full assessment. But I know in my classes, and this might be true for you as well, the content, it's so content heavy that having to find classroom time for multiple exams for one assessment seemed like it wasn't something I could figure out how to do. And so an alternative that I have done, and I learned this from one of my colleagues at York, Professor, sorry, Andrew McEachran. So I'm calling this proficiency quizzes. And so the focus is on something that was presented here as well at this conference by Professor Mark McDonald, where he talked about measuring the learning gain in multi-attempt quizzes. So it's a similar thing where there are multi-attempt quizzes, and it may or may not be, I'm not sure the details of Professor McDonald's approach, but in our approach, where I connect this with the multi-stage exam is in the collaborative piece. So the idea here is that not only do students have opportunities to take different forms, randomized quizzes, and they're done online, but in between each attempt, they're encouraged to get help. So they have an opportunity to take a quiz, and identify which pieces they struggled with. They can take those questions, go to their online learning community with their peers, ask those questions, work with each other. They can ask the instructor, they can ask their teaching assistants, so they get the help, and then they try again. And as Professor McDonald indicated as well, we can see that there are learning gains that happen. And so, yeah, so that's my adaptation, where that process happens outside of the classroom in my particular case.
Thank you. So the second technique is student-generated exam questions, problems, and examples. And here we've seen multiple approaches. So some instructors, they ask the students to generate questions. Some of them, multiple choice questions when I talk about questions. Some of them ask them to generate problems, and some of them ask them to generate examples. And Natasha, did you want to?
Yes, this has been my favorite alternative assessment that I have done. And so this happened last year for the first time. I taught a course that I taught many years in person, but it went online for the first time because it had to. And I'm now teaching it back in person now. But anyway, I wanted to incorporate something new. And I had met Eliana in the meantime and had learned about this generated type of exam questions. And so the course that I'm currently using this process in is a logic in computer science course, so mathematical logic in computer science. And the textbook we use is generated by a faculty member here, but doesn't have a lot of review problems or practice problems for the students. So they complain that they didn't have enough. So this was the opportunity I saw where they could generate their own. They can be very creative. Some of them generate like all kinds of different types of questions. And it's just really exciting. So the way that I've done it in my class is to have them post in a discussion forum so that every student has access to every problem being shared by the other students so that they can use them for practice. I identify for them that they do have to evaluate the question as well, because the student may have made a mistake, right? And so they can communicate with each other. And what I really like is that, because it's sort of there and they post it in advance, and I've asked them to also, they're required to post a unique one. So they review those students that have posted before to make sure that, the question they're going to post is not the same. So, but they have some support from each other to see the different kinds of questions they're posting. And so a lot of them are posting early, right? Because they want to make sure their question, they can use it and they don't have to adjust it in any way. But then it also allows me to see what they're posting, and I provide feedback. So like, before the deadline is up, right? They can repost or adjust something if they need to. So this assignment just happened like this week. And so in some cases they didn't read the instructions. And so it was the wrong, area of the course that they were posting the question about. So then I was able to provide that information so they could adjust. And so the first time I did it, there was also a reflective component. So they not only posted the question, but then they also posted like, why is this a good review question? What, skills does it assess? Those kinds of things. This year, I didn't quite ask them to do that much, just because it became a little bit tricky for the teaching assistants to grade. So this class has between 150 and 200 students. And so we've got to work on supporting that process and all of that, the writing. And so I simplified it a little bit. So they posted their question. We could see, if they understand the content based on the type of question they posed, and then connected to the learning outcome skill. So it wasn't as reflective, but an opportunity just to make some of those connections.
Thank you. And the third one we're going to talk about, and I know that Natasha also used it in her classroom, is an oral assessment. And I'm gonna let her tell you briefly what she did.
Thank you. I'll try. I'm too excited, so I'm talking a lot. Sorry. So in the oral assessments that I have done, so there are a couple of components. One is that, like somebody else posted, we have like tutorials that connect with the course. And so within this place, they have opportunities, the students, to do some collaboration, but also they give oral presentations. So they get practice problems, and then they orally present their solutions to each other, get feedback. And this is a learning development process. So they get to try multiple times, and they're assessed holistically over the course of the semester. And this also provides them practice for the one time I did both an oral midterm and an oral exam. Next time, only an oral exam, in which I met one-on-one with students via Zoom. They had the questions in advance prepared, and then they presented in one case. And in another case, they had practice problems that were very similar, but not exactly the same as the ones that I asked them. And so they did some work on their own, and then presented to me, or sometimes they would just present, like think through and share their process. Yeah.
Thank you. Technique number 4 is e-portfolios in math assessment. And this is where students are required to make connections with the course, with other courses, and with things that they do outside the course. It could be voluntary work, it could be practicum. So here what we are asking them to do is they provide multiple artifacts. And one example I can talk about is at Athabasca University, we use e-portfolios for the end of the master's program, where students have to choose 5 artifacts, and then they need to explain how these artifacts relate to their learning. So it's not only the artifact, it's not telling a story, it's reflection, and it's telling us how they've learned and how they showcase their learning through these artifacts. Did you want to add something here, or do you want me to proceed?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just be really quick. So two different kinds of examples. One where students are practicing problems throughout the course and they have an opportunity to kind of put their favorite solutions together and present in a kind of journal at the end. And then also just a sort of learning reflection in a problem solving context also.
Thank you. So technique number 6 is peer assessment, peer feedback, and social annotation. And here we put a link here for it's for a hypothesis, and this is a social annotation software where students can annotate and they can see each other's annotations and they can annotate a problem in math. It's related to social learning, to peer feedback. And something interesting that I also saw is a gallery walk for peer feedback. So let's say students provide each other with feedback, and then there's a session, there's a 1-hour session where people present that peer feedback and they present what they've learned from it. And the assessment, the grade is on the peer feedback that is given. Some instructors ask peers to give grade to each other and some instructors don't. So it's up to you to decide. Natasha?
Keep going. This one's okay.
Okay, so a renewable assessment, and this is also related to Natasha's example about the book that they use and the examples that they have for that. So one thing is course auxiliary materials. Another thing, it could be a Wikipedia assignment where students write a Wikipedia article about a math problem, a math topic, or they review other articles. They can create illustrations for an article. Also, one thing that I really find amazing is assessing available resources, because I know, and multiple people and multiple students that I have, they go online, they research YouTube explanation of math problems. So one of the things that have been asked is for them to go and assess those YouTube videos with the explanations. What did you learn from it? What was it different from the classroom? And then they can write a reflection piece on this, because we already know that they're going out there and they're looking out there. So why don't we make use out of that? Okay, so fun, social media assessment. And this is also, I think it's really fun, a professional learning network. So asking students to, for example, this is something I do in my own classroom. I ask them, by the end of the course, you need to have a professional learning network. So throughout the course, go and find 10 people or organizations or movements that are talking about assessment, about math, and follow them, and then explain to me at the end, why did you choose these people and what did you learn from them? Because we want them to be clever when they are online and when they are using social media. And we found all these examples of people on Twitter who are discussing math. So this is something that they can also learn from. Instructors have given students a Twitter assignment, a TikTok assignment, a meme assignment where they've asked students to create a meme about a concept that they learned in the previous session, and then they presented in a gallery walk at the beginning of the next class. So here also we're going to talk about how alternative assessment is also changing the examples. And yes, we need to wrap up soon. And so when we choose different examples, here we're talking about you can find your data sets online, for example, on Google, on Trends, on Google Data Studio. And here we have multiple examples related to the SDGs. And instead of giving the students a data set, you can ask the students to go and check the trends and analyze them. For example, if you are teaching them a statistics course. So these are 9 techniques that we have talked about. I know time is out and maybe we don't have time for questions, but anyway, I don't know if you want to put your questions in the chat, we will also be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. A fascinating range of assessment techniques there. Yeah, thanks. Really interesting talk. So we want to start the next talk at 1:30. I'm just checking the chat for questions. So there are no questions in the chat, and I think we're out of time. The question I want to ask is, how do you know this is effective? And I guess that would be a discussion to have in the in the chat asynchronously later, because I think that's the $1 million question, isn't it? And how do we know the students have learned more? And if they've learned different things, then how do we know that's better? So I think that would be the kind of $1 million question. Thank you. Really, really challenging and interesting first talk this afternoon. So thank you. Chris Graham, can we make our other speaker, Frosina, co-host, please, and then we can start the next talk.
Sure, Chris, thanks.
Frosina, welcome. We'll just make you co-host, and then we'll be able to start the next talk in this session. So Frosina, thank you for coming to EAMS, and I'm very much looking forward to your talk, harnessing the power of technology to facilitate a creative approach to improve student engagement and assessment. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome everybody for coming. Really very well combined presentations today with Leanna and Natasha and me, all about student assessments. I will probably be talking even faster because I also have so many things to share. So get ready. During the last 2 years, especially the last school year, but there were two main questions that I was always thinking about. How do I engage students, and how does that engagement look like in asynchronous learning? Because I can be talking during Zoom lessons, but is the learning synchronous? Like, yes, I'm delivering the material, but are the students actually getting me? So that was one of the two questions that I had. And the other one is, how do I assess properly what students learned? I wanted to instigate a culture for learning. So that was my main goal, even before in in-person classes, and provide ongoing support, merciless support. I would always say to students, if I'm not driving, I'll reply to your email. So that was kind of like a to show them that I will be there while they learn and they work on a question. If you have a problem, take a picture, email me. If I'm not driving, I'll respond and you can go on. You probably remember this video from Veritasium, where he's kind of saying that this will revolutionize the education. And it was always something big and boom, but then after some time, it really doesn't go anywhere. But I think this time we hit exactly the point. This couple of years definitely are revolutionized for the education. Everything that we did, everything that the technology companies did, everything that the students are actually showing that they can also do is really amazes me. I do have a disclaimer as well, but this one is that what I will be presenting now is there are many, many things that already have been done. You probably are already doing, but I just want to show how I implemented them in my classes. I wanted to bring 3 pieces to my presentation today. One is what I did with students, with my classes before we started, what I was doing during the synchronous classes, because I was trying to bring the students to attend my synchronous lecture, because if they don't come to the class, not much I can do with them. But if they come, then hopefully they will get even more. And then after the class is over, how the learning continues after I finish my Zoom class. I hope this presentation inspires upon an activity or an inquiry that you may bring to your students as well. About my students, I teach college level math. I have 2 different streams, software and networking. In the first semester, they're mixed. Second semester, they're split. I tried many different strategies. I work with in a relatively bigger math department. We have different strengths from the faculty members. And I feel that we tried everything, from everything that we can hear or we see or read from another webinar or another book. We will try it and bring it to class and share with the rest of the faculty members. I didn't proctor my students when I was assessing them, but I was trying to find different approaches, how to minimize cheating, but also maximize learning, and different opportunities to show what they learned. So you'll see there's so many things that I tried, and many of them, almost all, I will be keeping when we go back in class. I am scheduled to go in class this fall. All these couple of years, I was all online. When we first went online, summer 2020, I sent a survey to students who did over 90 on test 1. Would you like to share some strategies on how you made those great results, and what would you like to say to the incoming students? Thinking, if my students don't believe me when I tell them, oh, you have to do the assignment, you have to do this and that, maybe they'll believe their former peers from the previous generation. So I gathered their comments, and what I did, I made a little video in VideoScribe. I put offensive music to go along, which, so I'll make the video play a little bit without the sound, but I wanted to show students that they're all capable to do lots of stuff. And with the comments from these students, like I can go on doing the assignments as soon as they open. Aren't we all say this to students? Attending classes isn't, again, the same thing that we all along tell students, but this time hoping that from students, coming from students, will do a better job. I don't have any research done on was the video really doing some work, but I have a verbal or written positive feedback from students, how they were kind of even inspired. I do finish the video a little bit with a little graffiti that was written a little bit, actually fair number of years ago, where in the elevator in our on our campus, it was saying, "Cry now, graduate later." And I share that very often with students, because when time comes very hard, I know it's understandable. College is hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody will do it, right? So I say that, but those times you know that you have your peers, your group that you kind of nurture and you make it all along. And I'm also there. I usually finish with, I'm just an email away. So whenever they have anything suspicious, they're not sure of, please send me an email. Then I have another survey during the first week. So I know this may not be an assessment, but it's kind of contributing towards the assessment later on. So during the first week, I sent a survey and asked a couple of things about the students, how they want to learn, what kind of commitment they have outside of college. You can be surprised of how many of them have part-time and even full-time work during the studies, and the time management skills, and how many hours they plan to do homework, and what's the percentage or that they plan to do attend the online lessons. And I come back to these two things. Like after the survey results I get, I create a PowerPoint and I bring them to class and I say, you promised me that you're going to be doing 5 hours per week homework. Are you doing it? Or you promised that you're going to do over 90%. And this survey actually in week 1 is over 70% taken by students. Like it's the biggest percentage of attempting or filling the survey from all the surveys that I do. It's also interesting, the time management. Most of the students are very sure of their time management. And I'll show you a little bit later how that time management 3 and 4 star kind of tries to get a little bit down. I also ask for what are their expectations from the teacher. And when I bring them to class, I say, this is what you said, and I'll deliver everything that you wrote. Most of them, like so far, I don't think that I got a comment from a student that will say, no, do something that is not achievable by the teachers. I'll deliver, but then I say, these are my expectations from you. So I will deliver, but I also expect things from your side as well. So we have a little bit of chat during, based on those survey results. My course content, I'm in Canvas, and I create all the modules that inside my Canvas. I don't have a textbook, I have course notes. I have like a course outline, and learning plan is also brought on the front page. But I was always saying, wouldn't it be nice if I create a quiz on the syllabus, as many of us already have done, right? But this time I did it in a little bit of a different environment. So I use Mobius in my assessment, or anything that I can think about, I bring in Mobius. So this is a 360 image video of my one of the networking cybersecurity, I believe, classroom that we have at the college. And just to give you an insight how that looks, and I think that even if I move it, I don't know how well this goes, because when I move it, I don't know how it looks from your side, but I'll bring, oh, I cannot paste. I wanted to share a link from this page only. Yeah, I put it in the chat, so you can just experience how this kind of movement, I don't know, it excited me the first time I went in the app, so I can so I kind of squeeze in the questions that I want to ask, the most important things that I want to ask about my course at the beginning. When is the test one? Make sure that you are you don't have a work or something else for those dates. So they found it very nice. And one thing is that my students are online, so they didn't come to campus. So any picture that I can bring from the campus was a cherry on the top for sure. The other part of the course content, because I don't have a textbook, everything was in course notes. I made a roadmap in Mobius where I will have the material and videos, short videos beside each of the topic. My Zoom classes were not recorded, but all the material was in little bits and pieces put in Mobius. They can refer, they can have during an assignment, when they work on a question, they can refer back. Universal design of learning, we're very big on that one. So now I said, okay, for my course notes, beside each example, I'll have a Q note, a Q code, so QR code, where if they have the printed notes, so this is a work in progress. I did it in module 1 and 2 modules in another course, but summer is still young. Hopefully I'll finish it so I can start fully for the next semester. But anything that I can bring in, I will bring in. My classes, my lectures, the ideal that I have is to bring it in little pieces, kind of like a micro lecture approach. Still work in progress, but again, every lecture that I can bring in and compile together is a plus. Bringing a video inside Mobius and having, this is a YouTube video, I teach Boolean algebra, computer math. And also then I have a little video of me working on an example with my handwriting. So they say that when students see somebody else writing down, so they kind of try to copy and they write down as well. Starting with a little example, small question, not right away to the big one. We probably are doing the same. I always say, like, not knowing is not a pleasant feeling. So making sure that my first question is very achievable, that's my goal. And then after the lecture, even if I teach in class, I will say, where do you think a student will make a mistake? Like, not you, but somebody else. What kind of mistake do you think it may happen? Or what do you think your teacher may ask on the exam or on the test? So I use Mobius. I started using Mobius 2020 winter, before the pandemic started. And thanks God, because it saved me during the online. I'm a mathematician. I'm not a programmer, but I was able to do a lot in Mobius. Just going through the questions that are already there, evaluating that code and making my own. And I also had 2 students helpers before we went online. So that also was pretty crucial for me. Again, I have 2-hour lectures, theory delivery. I try to make, when I deliver in class during Zoom, I don't want to be a tutor. So I try to make it a little bit more professional. So a little bit, the theory has to be delivered in a lecture kind of mode. But then we have same worksheet. So we work the same, the students have the same paper, we work on the same examples. I encourage, and maybe because my kids are computer kids, they love to chat. So the chat is very big and frenzy during the classes. But again, for different classes, and I started this for another course that it's a new development. There are different teams in modules that I can use. And I'm not a programmer, I cannot create a team, but I borrowed one from, I believe, University of Waterloo was the team, and I just changed the colors, and I can have my class, my course like that. The support that I have from the Mobius side was enormous, and it was really, really beneficial. Everywhere I go, I try to give them a big credit for that. Learning strategies, I included learning strategies in my assignment. And I said, here is a video, identify some strategies that may be used by you. And I asked them students to comment. So this is in an assignment, a last question, and it was a bonus. This is week 3, where students will pick which ones are the best and then write a little comment about them. The comments that I had from students were really, really reflection. And I'm sure, I don't know, it is anecdotal, but definitely it made a little bit of a difference in their way of study. So by week 3, with this little quiz, assignment question, I noticed that there was something else going with students. The time management dropped a little bit. There were other things that were also important, but the time management, they started not to be so sure, and they had to work on. Mobius gives me the feedback using the same values as in the question. So that's pretty cool. And I believe most of the online assessments are going that way. But I was really happy with having that. I was even amazed how they can use the same numbers that they use. Also, I was able to bring another thing. This is from Objection LOL, where a student can, like I have a question where solving a very simple equation, but there is a simple error that most of the times happen by students. And when I created this, I didn't know that this comes from a game that students played in high school. So I really, really, like, they thought that I was cool bringing that into an assignment. But there is a little, there is not an error in the solution, but there is really a ground for appeal. So I was really trying to see, and this cannot be Googled. Students cannot really go somewhere else and find it. So about assessments, we do know that how students get assessed, that's how they plan, they try to learn. Most of the students will even go and attempt the quiz and the assignments without even going through the notes. I try to bring short answers with explanations and multiple choice with explanation. So there is an immediate feedback assessment technique. This is a paper that I had, like it was a little kind of cards where you can scratch to see where the answer is. And by the how many of them were scratched, I can see how many times students were wrong. So this was done when we were in face-to-face. And I said, can I do this in Mobius? And yes, I can. So I gave them 5 multiple choice answers, but there will be a penalty after each attempt. This was good because students will, like, yes, you can attempt all 5 of them and see which one is the last one will definitely work, but then you're losing a little bit. So when I did the test, my last 5 questions will be multiple choice with penalty. So they will keep themselves busy with these last questions, but at least they will still get some kind of answer or mark for the attempt. Or I can bring, I'm not sure, you probably have seen the flow chart, the bar chart, or any other things, but this comes from Flourish. You create the bar graph in Flourish, but then you bring it in Mobius. And just that flexibility that I as a teacher have, instead of saying or sending a student somewhere else, and then another somewhere else, and another somewhere else, and every student has to now get used to that kind of app. Where do I press start or end or whatever? And then another program, another course has different apps as well. No, this way you actually have everything in one spot. You can write, you can get a question, multiple choice, or this is a simple write me short overview. And actually there are a couple of 2 more questions after this part. But again, something from outside that you can bring in Mobius. Tests, they like to have input towards tests. So instead of asking them to create questions, I created a test review of 20, 30, 40 students. I do have to talk a little bit faster from now on. I see the time. So what I did, I created those test reviews or final exam reviews. And then I asked students, rank the question. Please rate this question in order of preference and your understanding for the test. And I said, I'll actually go and I'll take the top 10 questions, your choices from all the class, and I'll put those concepts on the actual test. This gave students extra work, extra preparation for the test, and extra motivation to prepare for the test. And also, they are in control. Now it was interesting, although, that to see one question will be 5 stars for one student and 1 star for another student. So again, just shows how students learn and work differently. The first time when I did this, I did it manually. I collected all the data. I put it with pen and paper. I promised them I'll take the 10 questions, and I did it. But then I went and I asked Mobius Digital Ed, and I said, like, is there a way of getting that data per question, per part of a question? And I was almost sure that they're going to say no, but they did say yes. And they said, this is how you do it. And it's an Excel file. You go in, and then from that Excel file, you just say how many stars, and you can, and then in Excel, I can manipulate and see which questions were the top 10. But that was, for me, I was blown away. Yes, I can do it. It's not just per question, which question was the lowest one, but it was per part of a question. And then when I did the tests and the final exam, I actually had a little copyright here where it says Mocha College, because I say these questions are my intellectual property. So instead of on top of your cheating accusation, like if you get caught, you will also be with academic integrity. There is actually a professor in the States who sued their students for academic integrity as well, like the whole class. I also communicate the results. I create a little bar graph or histogram of how the test went, and then I ask them. I release the comments because students write handwritten solutions, upload them, I mark them, and then I release the comments, not the grades. And then I ask, what grade do you think you're gonna get? And predict the grade, but also describe any changes in the strategies. What do you think you will learn differently? So this was pretty interesting to see how the top 10, the top 3 from week 3, manage your time, master environment, and take notes, changed after test 1, and manage your time came to be 3rd, take notes came to be 1st, and eliminate distraction was also 2nd. It was very interesting for me as a teacher, and I do plan to do this every semester, when, especially in the first semester, incoming students, where they kind of learn how they learn as well. Academic integrity, I try to make questions. For example, this is a video where a full solution with an error locate and click on which row has the error. Or I have a logic block diagram and they have to click on which gate is the actual output B naught plus C, or multiple choice questions with a penalty, as I mentioned earlier. I do have online timed exam, but it was because I want to have all students at the same time. If somebody misses a student, they will have 80% another makeup test in Mobius, but also 20% oral exam. So that was new last year that I started. So far it went well. I don't think that I plan to have a little survey asking students after the fact, but somehow didn't get through that. For the participation, I have two things to do. One is module 1 video tutorial, and the other one is map concept encounter. For the video tutorial, watch a video on something cool, a little bit challenging material, and then answer questions. So this was for the students who were a little bit more understanding the material, because for the same class, I'll have students who know everything and students who really, really suffer still. So this was for more challenging students. The other option that I gave them, so they can choose one or the other, pick a concept that you had problems understanding, but you finally understood it, and then reflect and share how you did it. The things that they wrote, the students wrote, was really, for me, a great insight. How they perceive my teaching or reading through the notes, that was pretty crucial for me as well. Additional support, the Mobius, for example, Mobius has big bank of questions from other institutions. I actually found one from Professor Michael McCabe from Europe. I adapted it. I gave the credit. For this fall, I plan to bring students kind of like a brush up lessons before we start. Here is something that you can brush up from high school math. And also plan to bring an academic integrity test, or kind of like a quiz question before they attempt a test. Everything for the academic integrity. And here is the math escape room that I created. It is based on Professor Paul McGrath from University of Waterloo. The 360 images are from our Professor Richard Borger from our Mocha College. And this is the link that I had posted as well before. Initially, I created 2 escape rooms, first and second semester. It was the questions were very hard. I gave them as a bonus. The students were very liking it, like they really liked it. But the attempt was not that high because it was bonus on top of the final exam, during final exam week when they all prepare for all the other stuff. For the following year, for this school year, I brought them the same questions, but brought them in assignments. Last question in each of the assignments, so they can still access or see the campus, because again, these are my online students. And course feedback, what I did every semester, we do have a course evaluation. I took all the comments and I put them in word cloud, word it out. The most frequent word was students. Another semester, another year, again, students, doesn't fail. It's all about students. And it's that kind of comment that students will say, they really appreciate everything that we do for them.
Sorry, Frosina, just to, yeah. We're running short of time, so just to remind you of the clock, apologies.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's my end. That's my end as well. It was, that's what I wanted to say. It was really all about students.
Thank you very much. So that brings us up to 5 o'clock here in the UK. Thank you very much to our Canadian colleagues for joining us. It's a fascinating session from both speakers, a lot of very interesting things there. I have been monitoring the chat and the questions online. I think in fairness to letting people leave on time, we don't really have time for questions from Sina either. We did run up against the time buffer there. So thank you very much. I think we should thank both speakers and bring the session to an end.